Well, let's bring in Manu Bhagavan, a professor of history specializing in modern India at the City University of New York. India appeared, sir, to be controlling this pandemic quite well initially, but now we're seeing hospitals overwhelmed. What do you think went wrong?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. Well, I think several things. First and foremost, I think that the government essentially declared victory too soon after the first wave. Second, they didn't adequately prepare for a second wave. And third, they took a go-it-alone approach rather than working in an all-parties fashion on a war footing. They, sort of decided that they would try to do policy on the fly, unfortunately. And this has had disastrous consequences for the country.
Now, we know that this is basically a race against many virus variants right now. And do you think it's in the interest of Western nations to help India quite quickly?
Yes, absolutely, obviously, because the longer India suffers, the more the virus transmits in the country, the more room there is for additional variants to take root, to grow, and then to threaten the West as well. So COVID is an international and global problem, and what affects one part of the world is ultimately going to affect every other part. So we have to quickly control, contain, and douse the fire in India so that it doesn't spread everywhere else and burn the whole world down.
And how far are the social inequalities impacting the situation here?
Okay, so this is a question with two different angles. On the one hand, rich and poor alike are suffering from COVID. So India's most famous movie star, Amitabh Bachchan, most famous cricketer, Sachin Tendulkar, both have come down with COVID. And famous politicians and journalists themselves or their families have come down with COVID, and some are suffering death as well. So in that sense, it affects both rich and poor. On the other hand, those who have the means are fleeing the country on private jets. And if they're able to, they purchase private canisters of oxygen to treat themselves or family members. So obviously, the weight of this is borne especially high by the poor. And in addition to that, broadly speaking, the poor have the least access to health care, and they're also subjected to what we might call COVID policing. So when there are fines for not properly masking or following protocols, or they're in the wrong place, or they're setting up a food stand and they shouldn't be, they bear the penalties for all of this in the starkest possible terms. So obviously, as with many things, the weight is borne unevenly and heaviest by the poor.
Okay, that's Manu Bhagavan speaking to us from the City University of New York. Thank you so much for your time and analysis.
Thank you.